I don't remember exactly why I was out so late that night. Work, maybe? Or a drink with a friend I hadn't seen in a while. The kind of evening that leaves you tired in a way that sits behind your eyes. The streets were slick with the recent rain, glistening under the amber wash of the street lamps, and I remember thinking it felt colder than it should have for that time of year. The bus stop at Danton and Fifth was mostly empty, save for some guy smoking something sharp-smelling under his hoodie, and an old woman with a scarf tied tight around her chin. I didn't pay them much attention. I just wanted to get home, eat whatever was left in the fridge, and forget the day. When the bus finally rounded the corner, it hissed to a stop in front of us with a mechanical groan. Route number 117. That was mine. Familiar. I've taken it 100 times, knew the turns by heart. I stepped on. No greeting from the driver. Not even a glance. He was a large man, square-shouldered, cap pulled low, face half lost in shadow. He sat unnaturally still, hands fixed on the wheel like he was part of the bus. I swiped my card. No beep. No ding. Nothing. But the green light flashed anyway, so I figured it had just glitched. The bus wasn't crowded. Maybe 10 or 12 people, all seated in pairs, though I couldn't say if any of them were actually together. Each sat stiff, eyes forward, not a phone in sight. Nobody glanced up when I boarded. Nobody shifted to make room. That's what struck me first. The stillness. The kind that settles into your chest like a held breath. I took a seat near the back, next to a window that fogged at the corners. My reflection looked pale. Washed out. I leaned my head back and closed my eyes for what felt like a second. When I opened them, we were moving. But something already felt wrong. I kept telling myself it was just late. That's why the air felt too still, why the bus hummed with that low, oppressive drone that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than the engine. The city passed by the windows in smears of orange and black. Familiar shapes, brick buildings, alleyways, corner stores with flickering signs, only not quite right. As if I was looking at a memory of the city, not the real thing. I glanced at the other passengers. None had moved. Not an inch. I watched a guy 3 rows ahead, slouched in his seat, arms crossed. He wasn't blinking. I stared until my own eyes watered. Nothing. No shift, no scratch, no breath. Like mannequins dressed in commuter clothes. At the next stop, a crossroad I recognized, normally busy even this late, the bus slowed, paused, then rolled on. No one got off. No one got on. Not even the doors opened. That was the second thing. The stops weren't stopping. I turned to look at the driver. His posture was exactly the same. His hands, at 10 and 2, looked too still to be real. I couldn't see his eyes. Couldn't even tell if he was blinking either. "Hey," I said, standing up. My voice sounded small, like it got swallowed by the humming. I took a few cautious steps forward, gripping the poles as the bus shuddered over a pothole. The driver didn't react. I stepped closer. "Excuse me, are you?" The driver moved. But not the way I expected. He didn't turn his head. Didn't look at me. Just tightened his grip on the wheel. I could see his knuckles bulge beneath his gloves. That's when I noticed something that kicked a cold ripple through my chest. The fare box didn't have a screen. No numbers. Just a smooth, black surface. I turned back toward the aisle. My seat was empty. But I hadn't moved that far from it. Still, the figure sitting there now, it wasn't me. Not exactly. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light. The windows reflected enough that faces blurred, and the overhead fluorescence buzzed with that cold, yellow flicker that made skin look waxy. But no, there was someone in my seat. Same jacket. Same hairstyle. Sitting in the same slouch I had been in. Head tilted just slightly toward the glass. I stood there for a second too long, one hand still on the rail, frozen halfway between denial and panic. The person didn't move. Didn't even breathe. But something about them, about me, if I could call it that, looked off. Like a wax figure sculpted from memory. I stepped backward. My foot hit the edge of the stair near the front, and I stumbled. The motion finally made a sound louder than the engine, the scuff of my shoe against the rubber. Every head on the bus turned toward me. All at once. Not slowly. Not gradually. Just snapped. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick, buzzing, charged with the kind of pressure that makes your ears ring. Their faces were hollow, not disfigured, not monstrous, but emotionally empty. Eyes wide and glassy, lips slightly parted like they were stuck in mid-thought, mid-sentence, mid-scream. I backed away, heart pounding. I went to the door. Slammed my hand on the emergency button. Nothing. Tried again. Still nothing. I pounded on the glass, yelling, "Stop the bus!" No one moved now. They'd turned to me, but that was it. Like they were waiting. I turned to the driver. "Let me off. Please!" His hands stayed on the wheel. I could see his shoulders rise and fall now, slow and mechanical, like someone pretending to breathe. The bus kept going. And outside the window, the city started to disappear. I pressed my face to the window, trying to ground myself in something, anything, real. But the city I thought I knew was gone. We were still moving through streets, technically. But the buildings were wrong. No lights in the windows. No signs on the shops. No movement anywhere. Just empty, gray shapes outlined against a darker sky. And the sky, God. It wasn't the sky I left behind. No stars. No clouds. Just this endless, velvet black, like we were moving through space with the ceiling just a few feet above the rooftops. I scanned for street signs. There were none. No lights on poles, just dim halos of cold white from the bus's headlights. The hum of the engine seemed to get louder the longer I sat there. Like it was crawling inside my head. I pulled out my phone. Tried calling 911. No signal. Of course. But not even the "no service" message came up. Just nothing. A black screen, as if the whole network had stopped existing. I opened the map app. It wouldn't load. Battery, 83%. But the clock? It was stuck at 12:17 a.m. Exactly when I got on. I stood again, this time slower, more careful. The thing in my seat, that version of me, was gone now. The seat was empty, like I'd imagined the whole thing. But I hadn't. I knew I hadn't. I walked halfway down the aisle. Everyone had turned their heads back forward. Like nothing happened. Back to that rigid stillness. I leaned toward the nearest passenger, a middle-aged man in a heavy coat. His hands were clasped in his lap. Perfectly still. "Hey," I whispered, like sound might break whatever fragile reality I was now inside. "Are you okay? Can you hear me?" He didn't move. Didn't blink. I reached out, slow, careful, and tapped his shoulder. Ice cold. Solid. His skin didn't feel like skin. It felt preserved. That's when I noticed his chest wasn't moving. He wasn't breathing. None of them were. I backed away from the frozen man, heart racing like it was trying to outrun the silence pressing in on me. I looked at the others, same thing. All of them. Statues in human skin. Not breathing. Not blinking. Not alive. And yet the bus kept moving like it had a destination. Like it knew where it was going. Like they were all just along for the ride. And now, so was I. I sank back into an empty seat near the middle, as far from the driver and the passengers as I could get. My body felt heavy. Every breath like pulling air through soaked cloth. I pressed my head against the cool window, half hoping it would jolt me awake. Maybe I'd fallen asleep on the bus after all. Maybe this was just some vivid dream, some stress-induced hallucination. But outside, the streets had unraveled into something else entirely. No more buildings. Just open terrain. Flattened stretches of land with telephone poles that led nowhere, flickering as if caught in different seconds of time. Trees without leaves. Roads that forked into the dark and twisted back into themselves. It didn't look like a city anymore. It looked like an echo of one. I looked at the back of the driver's head. Still unmoving. Still steering, somehow. There was no road to steer on. Just the illusion of forward motion, and the hum. That terrible, endless hum. I whispered to myself, "Where are we going?" As if in response, the driver's head tilted, just slightly, toward the overhead mirror. I saw only the bottom half of his face, lit faintly in the reflection. He smiled. Not wide. Not dramatic. Just enough. I didn't ask again. I don't know how long I sat there. My hands had gone numb. My legs too. But I was afraid to move again. Like even shifting in my seat might wake something up. The silence wasn't silence anymore, it had weight. Like something was pressing on the bus from all sides. Like we were inside a sealed container that kept getting smaller. I kept staring at the driver's mirror, waiting to see that half smile again. But he didn't move. Neither did the passengers. I stood up anyway. Not because I had a plan. I just couldn't sit still a second longer without losing my mind. This time, I walked to the back door. There was an emergency lever there. Bright red. I hadn't noticed it before. I yanked it down hard. Nothing happened. I hit it again. Pulled it, twisted it. The bus didn't even acknowledge me. I pounded on the back door. "Let me out!" The moment the words left my mouth, the bus slowed. Not stopped. Just eased into a crawl. I turned toward the front, hope spiking through the fear. Maybe it heard me. Maybe the driver was giving me a chance to get off. But we didn't pull up to a stop. There was no bench. No sidewalk. No anything. Outside, it looked like we'd entered a field. An empty plain of black grass swaying beneath an unseen wind. Moonless. Motionless. And then, something new. A sound. Not from the bus. From the back. A soft scrape, like cloth brushing against metal. I turned slowly, every muscle tight with dread. One of the passengers had moved. Just slightly. His head tilted toward me. Not much. Just enough for his eyes to meet mine. He blinked. Once. He blinked. Just once. But it shattered whatever fragile rules this place had been obeying. I stood frozen, staring at the man. He looked almost normal now. Like someone waking from a long sleep. His eyes locked on mine, not empty, not vacant, but aware. Then, as if on cue, another head turned. And another. A woman near the middle of the bus twisted in her seat with a neck too slow, too deliberate, to be natural. Her eyes, milky gray, settled on me like I was a noise in a church. The hum in the bus deepened. Not louder but lower. It buzzed through my feet, into my knees, into my spine. Like it was vibrating the world apart, one layer at a time. I backed away from the door. The passenger who had blinked didn't move again, but his gaze followed me. So did the others. Row by row, heads turned. No words. No sounds. Just that quiet, unanimous noticing. I started walking toward the front of the bus, not running, just quick, shaky steps, trying not to break whatever fragile truce I had with the watchers behind me. When I passed one of them, a girl in her 20s with wet-looking hair and a scarf around her neck, she smiled. Not kindly. Not warmly. The smile was tight. Crooked. Like someone trying to remember how. I made it to the front. Banged on the partition behind the driver. "Please," I said. "Stop. I don't belong here." He didn't answer. But the bus began to speed up again. Faster than before. Outside the window, the plane gave way to something else, crumbling buildings, not from my city or anyone else's. They looked burned. Partially melted. Time-stamped in a way I couldn't explain. Like ruins from a future that hadn't happened yet. Inside, the lights overhead flickered once. And then I heard something I wasn't ready for. A whisper. Right behind me. I didn't turn around at first. The whisper had come so close I felt the air of it against my neck. But when I looked over my shoulder, there was no one behind me. The aisle was empty. Everyone still in their seats. But their heads, every single one, had turned to face me now. Eyes wide. Mouths closed. Still as ever. Except. "You're late," someone whispered again. This time from the opposite side. Still right behind me. I spun. Nothing there. I pressed my back to the plexiglass barrier behind the driver. My breath fogged it up instantly. I wasn't just scared, I was coming apart. It felt like the space inside the bus was folding, like there were corners in the air where corners didn't belong. Another whisper. Low. Drawn out. Closer than the others. "You were supposed to get off." I squeezed my eyes shut. Told myself not to listen. But the voices kept coming. Now layered. Now louder. "You missed it. You stayed too long. You know where this goes now." And then silence. I opened my eyes. The passengers had all turned their heads forward again. All except one. The girl with the scarf. She had stood up. She was walking toward me, one slow step at a time, as if her joints remembered how to move but not how to do it quickly. The lights above her dimmed with each step she took, like she carried a shadow with her that didn't belong to her body. I tried the driver again. Hit the plexiglass. Yelled. Begged. He didn't react. When I looked back, she was closer. 2 seats away now. And her mouth began to open. Her mouth opened wide, far wider than it should have. Not grotesque, not bloody. Just unnatural. Like a film playing in reverse, stretching too far on an old reel. And from inside her came not a scream, not words. But a sound. Low. Vibrational. A kind of rumble you feel in your chest before you hear it. It reminded me of something. Distant thunder, or the vibration of a plane cabin when it's going too fast, too high. I stumbled back, my shoulders hitting the driver's seat. The girl didn't stop. Her feet made no noise. Just that low, bone-deep frequency that built and built until the walls of the bus began to shimmer. And then, something shifted. The bus itself jerked sideways, hard, as if it had taken a sudden, impossible turn. I was thrown against the fare box, and for 1 second, just one, I swear I saw outside again. But not the plane. Not the ruins. It was a road. My road. The corner store with the neon open sign. The pizza place on Monroe. My stop. But only for a second. Then it was gone, swallowed by the black again. The girl had stopped walking. She stood just feet from me now, mouth still wide open, but the sound had faded. Her eyes, though, those didn't fade. They focused. She saw me. Really saw me. And in that gaze I felt something I couldn't explain. Not malice. Not hunger. Recognition. Like she knew me. Like I had sat where she was once. She didn't move again. Didn't close her mouth. Just watched. I couldn't breathe. My body screamed at me to run, but there was nowhere to go. Behind me, the driver was a statue. In front of me, a girl who looked like she remembered who I was in a way I didn't. I turned toward the windows again. Desperate now. But what I saw outside, it wasn't just a change in scenery. It was me. Walking. Just outside the bus. Same clothes. Same face. Head down. Moving along the side of the road like I had somewhere to be. I pressed my face to the glass. "Hey!" I shouted. "Hey!" The other me didn't look up. Just kept walking. And then, he stopped. Turned. And stared straight at me. His expression was hollow. Not shocked. Not scared. Just resigned. Then he opened his mouth and mouthed something I couldn't hear. One word. I could barely read the lips. "Run!" Then he faded. Like dust under water. Dissolving into the black. The girl in the aisle closed her mouth. And finally spoke. "You were never supposed to see that." Her voice was wrong. It wasn't hers. It was layered. Like more than one person speaking through her. Like someone playing with sound in a room with too many speakers. Behind her, the other passengers began to rise. one by one. No sound. Just movement. And I knew, without knowing why, that they were coming for me. Not to kill me. To keep me. They rose slowly. Not like zombies. Not jerky or grotesque. But intentional. Like they knew exactly how many steps it would take to reach me, and exactly how much time they had to do it. The girl stood aside now, like a usher stepping off stage. And I ran. I didn't know where I thought I could go. The bus wasn't long. It had no exits. But panic makes you move, even when there's no logic in it. I slammed into the back door again, pounded the emergency glass, screamed. Nothing. I turned around. And the bus wasn't the same anymore. The seats were rearranged. Longer somehow. Stretching back farther than they had before. The lighting was dimmer, a greenish hue now. The walls rippled faintly, like the inside of a tunnel filled with water. But it wasn't water. It was time. I could feel it. Like heat rising off pavement, but colder. Heavier. The passengers didn't speak. They didn't need to. Because ahead of me, in the flicker of the warped overhead lights, I saw myself again. Sitting in the second seat from the back. Not walking this time. Not fading. Just there. Looking out the window. Waiting. And worse? I remembered this moment. From the beginning. When I first sat down. When I first thought something felt wrong. I stared at that version of me, and in his hand was a phone. Lit. Screen on. Time, 12:17 a.m. I looked at mine. Same time. Still. I had never left the moment I got on. I wasn't moving forward. I was circling back. Again. And again. I staggered back from my other self, no, my earlier self, clutching the rail like it could anchor me to anything real. But reality had already slipped its grip. Because behind that earlier version of me, pressed against the window from the outside, were faces. Dozens of them. Mouths wide, eyes hollow. Not screaming, just watching. Silhouettes behind glass that didn't belong to a street or a reflection. Just faces, lining the outside of the bus like frost. And they weren't strangers. They were all me. Different versions. Slight differences, hair longer, beard gone, different jackets. But all me. Dozens of timelines stacked like playing cards, pressed together too tightly. One of them reached a hand to the glass. So did I. Our palms met, separated by the window, yet identical. And in that moment, a rush of memory hit me like vertigo, a feeling of stepping onto this bus before, again and again. Different nights. Different reasons. Always ending up here. Forgetting, each time, until the loop began again. I staggered back, gasping. My ears rang with that deep hum again, but now it was inside me. Like the bus had burrowed into my blood. The passengers were still watching me. The girl with the scarf tilted her head. You chose this, she said. No, I didn't, I said, shaking my head. I was just going home. Exactly, she replied, almost gently. Behind her, the driver finally turned his head. Just a little. And I saw my face under the cap. Not distorted. Not wrong. Just older. Tired. Familiar. The driver had been me all along. I couldn't move. The sight of my own face behind the wheel hit harder than fear. It hollowed me out. It wasn't just that he looked like me. It was the expression. The eyes. Dead, but not vacant. Like they'd seen everything, endlessly, and accepted it. I stepped forward, slowly now. Not out of courage, but because I had to see. I had to know. The other me, the driver, didn't flinch. Didn't move. But in that tiny shift of his head, I saw the same thing I'd seen in the passengers before they turned. Recognition. A deep, silent knowing. Like he'd been waiting for me to catch up. I stood right behind him now. My reflection looked back at me from the overhead mirror. It didn't feel like a mirror anymore. It felt like a window. I reached out, touched his shoulder. Cold. Like the others. But this time, something gave. He turned his head fully, looked at me, and said in a voice that wasn't quite mine, but close, too close. "Someone always has to drive." That's when I felt it, the bus slowing. For real this time. A groan of brakes. A pull of gravity forward. The kind of stop that says you've reached the end of something, whether you wanted to or not. I looked outside. But it wasn't a street. It wasn't anywhere I'd ever seen. Darkness. Stretching in all directions. A faint red light in the distance, pulsing like a heartbeat. And one open door. Just one. The door opened with a hiss, dry, metallic. Not like a bus door. More like a vault. Beyond it was no platform, no street, no air. Just a long, dim path of cracked concrete suspended over a bottomless dark. On either side, nothing. No sounds. No wind. Just that distant red pulse ahead, like a lighthouse blinking in the void. I turned to the passengers. They were all standing now. Silent. Watching. Somehow, they looked older. Weathered. Like the time I hadn't felt had touched them in ways I couldn't see before. Their clothes were faded. Skin pale. Expressions softened into something like pity. The girl with the scarf nodded toward the open door. "It's time," she said. I looked back at the driver, at me. Still seated. Still silent. Still gripping the wheel. He didn't speak again. But I understood. This was how it worked. You ride long enough, you become the one who keeps the ride going. No one chooses to be the driver. No one remembers when the switch happens. Unless you look. Unless you see. And I had seen. I stepped toward the door, heart jackhammering. My feet felt like they weighed twice what they should. The edge of the bus felt final, like crossing it would mean I'd never go back. But what would staying mean? An eternity behind the wheel? Watching new passengers get on, again and again, never remembering until it's their turn. I stepped out. The concrete echoed under me. And behind me. The door closed. The bus hummed. And drove away. Into the black. I stood alone on the concrete path, the last echo of the engine already swallowed by the void. No sky. No stars. Just the endless dark and that pulsing red light ahead, growing slightly brighter with each beat, like a heartbeat, or a warning. I didn't know what I expected to find out here. An answer. A punishment. A second chance. But the truth is, after what I'd seen, I no longer believed there was a real difference between any of those things. I walked. The path cracked under my steps, like it hadn't been used in a long time. Maybe no one ever made it this far. Maybe most just took the seat. Became the driver. Started the cycle again, a different face behind the wheel, never remembering they were once the passenger. But I remembered. I chose to remember. As I got closer to the red light, I saw it wasn't a structure. Not really. It was a door. Freestanding. Rusted. Tall enough to scrape the edges of the nothing above it. No frame. No hinges. Just standing there in the dark. And in its center, where a peephole should have been, was a mirror. My face looked back at me. But not the one I knew now. Not the one who had seen the loop, the watchers, the other selves. It was younger. Clean. Untouched. The version of me from the night I boarded the bus. Before. I reached out and touched the glass. It rippled. Then, a hiss behind me. The sound of a bus door opening. I turned. Another bus. Identical. Waiting. Empty. Lights on. Engine low. And for a long, terrible moment, I didn't know which way to go. Back on? Or through the door? Then the door creaked open. Slowly. Patiently. And all I could see beyond it was... well, you know what? That's the part I'm still not sure I can explain. But if you ever find yourself on a night bus with passengers who don't blink, don't miss your stop.